Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Fadahlah bi'ahum bin zil habsyi an Allah wa radana bidana wa anfa'na bi sana wal akhir wa hadrat Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam sirr Fatiha. Allah syaitan rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. نويت التعلم والتعليم والتذكر والتذكير والنفع والانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث على التمسك بكتاب الله وسنة رسوله والدعاء إلى الهدى والدلالة على الخير ابتغاء وجه الله ومرضاته وقربه وثوابه آمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد. So today we're gonna start on Kitabul Hajj, the chapter of Hajj or pilgrimage, and continuation of our Ta'lim Risalatul Jami'ah. So from the matan we just read the matan verse. وأما الحج فهو خامس أركان الإسلام وهو فرض على كل مسلم مكلف حر وكذا العمرة في العمرة مرة بشرط الاستطاعة وهي أن يملك ما يحتاج إليه في سفره إلى الحج ذهابا وإيابا ونفقة من تلزمه نفقته إلى رجوعه وأعمال الحج ثلاثة أشياء أركان وواجبات وسنن. So Habib Ahmad bin Zain just summarized the chapter of Hajj. So this is the translation. Hajj or pilgrimage is the fifth pillar of Islam. It is an obligation on every free, legally responsible mukallaf Muslim, as is the Umrah, once in one's lifetime, on condition that one has the ability to go. Ability here is istita'ah. Ability here means that one possesses what is needed to travel for the pilgrimage and back again. Payment for all the expenses of those he is legally obliged to support until his return. The acts of Hajj are of three types: the integral elements, arkan, the duties, wajibat, and sunnah. So this is the matan from the translation of Ahmad bin Zain's kitab. So Hajj is actually a very lengthy topic and can be confusing because most of us don't do Hajj like a lot. Maybe we get once in our life, once in our lifetime, and some don't even do Hajj, don't have the opportunity or cannot afford to do Hajj. So that's why is even those who study the theory on Hajj, when they come for the Hajj itself, to do the Hajj itself, they too can be confused, and they will find that certain theories is not as easy as it seems to be applied in the real scenario, real life experience of Hajj. So Hajj is, as we all know, the fifth pillar of Islam. Many books mention Hajj, which is Hajj is pilgrimage, and Umrah is the lesser pilgrimage. So many books mention Hajj after fasting as the fifth pillar of Islam, following the sequence as mentioned in a famous hadith. Bunyal Islam ala khamsin. So this is the famous hadith in by Nawawi is there. Syahadatul la ilaha illallah wa anna Muhammad Rasulullah wa iqamus salah wa ita'uz zakah wa shaum Ramadan wa hajjil baiti man istata'a ilaihi sabila. So it's the last to be mentioned in the arkan. Bunyal Islam ala khamsin. What is that? Islam is built on five pillars, on five. So syahadatul la ilaha illallah, the shahadatain, then iqamatus salah, performing the salah, and ita'u zakah, paying the zakat, Saum Ramadan, fasting, and hajjul baiti man istata'a ilaihi sabila, performing the hajj, uh, for those who can afford and have the ability to do so. Um, so Hajj is made obligatory in the 6th year of Hijri calendar. And some say it's 9, but the more is that the stronger opinion is the sixth year of Hijri calendar after Hijrah. The origin of Hajj is derived from the Quran, Hadith, and Ijma', consensus of ulama. So it's the same as many other fasting and Salah and Zakat, all derived from the Quran, Hadith, and Ijma'. And scholars differ on whether Hajj exists in the Sharia of the previous prophets. So, does Hajj exist in the Sharia of the previous prophet? This thing, scholars differ on this. Most of them say that Hajj does exist, even in the Sharia of the previous prophets before our Prophet Sallallahu. And while some says that is actually the specific for the ummah of Rasulullah SAW. But some say that it's similar but not exactly the same. Like tawaf, they have tawaf also, but the whole ritual might be different. So they have differences of opinions in this matter. But the stronger opinion is that Hajj exists, but it might not be the same exactly. It might have some other things as well, or lack of other things that we like like the Hajj we have now. But many similarities like tawaf and all. Mm. So pronunciation of Hajj, the Hajj, al-Hajj, and it can also be um, can be pronounced as H, al-Hajj, but the stronger is Hajj, the language of Hijaz. The Hijazi, they call it al-Hajj, and the Najdi, al-Hajj. So both are permissible and both are used in the Quran. Both readings are permissible as per the qiraat. In the qiraat of different qiraat, they use Hajj and some use Hajj. So in certain places of the Quran. So the meaning is the same. That is Hajjil Baiti or Hajjil Baiti uh, is the same meaning. Where is the Walillahi ala nasi hajjul baiti man istata'a ilaihi sabila. Walillahi, this is Surah to Al Imran, the verse 97. So down here in our qiraat, we always read Walillahi ala nasi hajjul baiti man istata'a ilaihi sabila. So hajjul baiti is the hajj to al bait is the Kaaba. So performing Hajj is the same. So then we go to what is the intention? What is the logatan? The meaning of Hajj in the linguistic meaning. Logatan is actually it means intention, and Shar'an, the technical meaning specific for this topic, for this chapter Al Hajj, is intent for the house of Allah Al Haram to perform specific ritual. That is when we say Hajj, the technical meaning is the intent for the house of Allah Al Haram to perform specific ritual. That is the meaning of Hajj. And Umrah, lugatan, the linguistic meaning is visiting, ziyarah. Then the Shar'an, the technical meaning is visiting the house of Allah Al-Haram to perform specific ritual. So the difference is just now is the same thing I mean, the technical meaning is similar, but this one is visiting. So can be done anytime. But while Hajj is specific during its season. Syara'an qasdu baitillahil haram linusuk. The the what is that? Intent of Baitullah, the house of Allah, al-Haram, to perform specific ritual. That is Hajj or Umrah. So it depends on what you are performing. So your intention will be based on that, Umrah or Hajj. So the origin of the rulings and the origin of Hajj itself, the Hajj itself, is the book, the Sunnah and Ijma. Just now we have mentioned. So, Walillahi ala nasi hajjul baiti. In the Quran it says, Allah says, Walillahi ala nasi hajjul baiti man istata'a ilayhi sabila wa man kafara fa inna Allah ghaniyun anil alamin. And Hajj, pilgrimage to Mecca, is a duty that mankind owes to Allah. Those who can afford its expenses and whoever disbelieves and whoever disbelieves, that is denying Hajj, then Allah stands not in need of any of them, of the Alamin. Alamin is mankind, mankind and jinn. So this is from Surah Al-Imran. So we can see that Allah says, and Hajj is a duty that mankind owes to Allah. So it shows that it is wajib. It is you have to do it. It's obligatory. Those who can afford it expenses. So from here we can see that those who cannot afford, then they are not obligated to do. But how do we say whether one can afford or not? Then we will go through that when it comes. So this is from the Quran. Then there is the Sunnah, many hadith mentioning about Hajj. One of them is the hadith, the famous hadith from Bukhari and Muslim. Bunyal Islam ala khamsin syahadatu la ilaha illallah wa anna Muhammadar Rasulullah wa iqamus salah wa iqatus salah wa ita'uz zakah wa shaum Ramadan wa hajjal baiti man istata' ilaihi sabila. The same hadith we mentioned just now, and many other hadiths, many other hadith that point towards the obligation of Hajj for mankind. And ijma, all Sahaba and scholars agree that Hajj is obligatory if one can afford to do so. No scholars have ever mentioned that Hajj is not obligatory if you can afford it. So more hadiths on pilgrimage, the Hajj itself, and Umrah and its superiority. The Prophet ﷺ said, whoever performs Hajj for Allah's pleasure and does not have sexual relations with his wife and does not do evil or sins, then he will return after Hajj free from all sins, as if he were born anew. This is from Bukhari. And another hadith narrated by Abu Hurairah, the Prophet ﷺ was asked, which is the best deed? He said, to believe in Allah and His Apostle. He then asked, which is the next in goodness? He said, to participate in jihad in Allah's cause. He was then asked, which is the next? He said, to perform Hajj Mabrur. Then narrated also by Abu Hurairah, the Prophet ﷺ said, the Umrah to the next Umrah is a kafara. That is expiation of all sins. Kafara of all sins, expiation of all sins one commits between them. And an accepted Hajjul Mabrur, is a supreme action, the reward for which is paradise. So that shows the superiority of Umrah and Hajj. Another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ also said, verily there shall be no reward for Hajj Mabrur, an accepted Hajj, except Jannah, the paradise. So all this hadith shows that Hajj is really superior ritual, which is obligatory for mankind, if you can afford. So what is Hajjul Mabrur? Just now the hadith also mentioned Hajjul Mabrur. Yeah? Hajjul Mabrur. He also said, verily there shall be no reward for a Hajj Mabrur, except paradise. So Hajj Mabrur is a Hajj which is not mixed with sins. From the time one goes into Ihram, that is start of the Hajj ritual, until Tahallul, the second Tahallul. Because in Hajj there are two Tahallul. In Umrah there's only one Tahallul. Hajj there are two Tahalluls. So the second Tahallul, when they say until the Tahallul, and that is the end of the Hajj ritual. That is the second tahallul. So in between all this, from the time he ihram until the second tahallul, he did not do any sins. Uh, this is Hajj Mabrur. This is the view of the opinions of scholars on Hajj Mabrur. And some say it is the accepted Hajj. How? That one depends. We leave it to Allah how he accept. If he accepted the Hajj, then that means he got the person got Hajj Mabrur. So of course, it can also the first opinion can also be can be included in this, because Hajj which is not mixed with sins from the time of one goes into ihram until he tahallul, and if he is sincere and does all the sunnah and all, so inshallah he will get the accepted. Inshallah his Hajj will be accepted, and thus he will get Hajj Mabrur. But we don't know for sure. That one is up to Allah. But uh, some say it is to perform all the integrals, the arkan and the duties, the wajibat and the sunnah of Hajj, and leaving small and big sins from the start of ihram until the second tahallul, with sincerity and halal sustenance. So this actually includes the first two opinions as well. So this is more like detailed and will include more things. So that are the opinions of the scholars for what is the meaning of Hajj Mabrur. When we say Hajj Mabrur, Hajj Mabrur, Hajj Mabrur, this is the what is meant by Hajj Mabrur. So signs of Hajj Mabrur, signs of that you get Hajj Mabrur. The basic signs of Hajj Mabrur is that upon one's return from the Hajj, his life changes towards striving to be a better Muslim. He will be a better Muslim. He will be more pious. He'll try his best to be a better Muslim and leave all the sins that he have previously did, or small sins and big sins. And he becomes punctual in fulfilling the commands of Allah Almighty. He becomes closer to Allah. I mean, he obey the prayers and obey the fasting. He's more punctual in fulfilling. That means he don't delay his prayers and all this, and he try his best to do everything that is asked from Allah. That is commanded from Allah, and his love and inclination towards the hereafter increases, and love for the worldly pleasures decline. And he strives to instill in himself good characters and refrain from all types of evil, fulfilling the obligations laid down by Allah and avoid all the things forbidden by him. So these are the signs of Hajj Mabrur. If one comes back from Hajj and he find that he becomes a better Muslim and strive to have good characters and avoid all sins. Of course, he cannot avoid all, but he will try to avoid. He will try his best to avoid, and whatever sins that he actually do is not what is that? It's not his. He does it not um, on purpose. Then, inshallah, he have got Hajj Mabrur. Hajj and Umrah of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. The Prophet ﷺ only performed Hajj once after Hijrah. So after the command of Hajj is obligated in the 6th year, right? 6th year of Hijrah. So he only performed in the 10th. The 10th year, he performed the Hajj once. That's it. He did not perform other Hajj in his lifetime, but he did perform countless Hajj before the Hijrah. Before Hijrah, that means when he was in Mecca, he did perform Hajj. But at that time, the obligation, the obligatory of Hajj uh, is not obligated yet. I mean, it's not wajib yet. The command has not came down from Allah. So it's only obligated in the 6th year, and some say 9. Mm. Then the Prophet also did Umrah many times. He did 4 Umrahs. Okay, he did 4 Umrahs, 6, 7, 8, and 10th year of Hijrah. Mm. And the 10th year, uh, it's okay. Yeah, okay. Yeah, he did 4 Umrah. Okay, the Fardu Ain. Fardu Ain according to all madhab, ijma, consensus of scholars that it is Fardu Ain for Hajj. There is no one saying that it's Fardu Kifaya or Sunnah. You know, it's Fardu Ain. That means everybody who can afford and able to do so have to do so once in one's lifetime. This one Hajj is called Hajjatul Islam. Uh, if he meets all the condition, then he will have to do once at least. The second, third, fourth, fifth, and whatever how many times he do, is all not consider Hajjatul Islam. Hajjatul Islam is only one, the first one, which will drop the obligatory Hajj for that person. And Umrah is also Fardu Ain according to our madhab Syafi'i. But according to Madhab Maliki and Hanafi, it's Sunnah Mu'akkadah. That means it's a Sunnah that is highly recommended and highly emphasized, according to Madhab Maliki and Hanafi. But Shafi'i is Fardu Ain. That means every person have to do. It's like Hajj. And according to Madhab Hanbali, it is wajib, and some say Sunnah. Within the Madhab Hanbali itself, some they differ. Some say wajib, some say Sunnah for Umrah. But Hajj, no, Hajj, all the 4 madhab and all the scholars say is wajib. It's fardu ain, in fact. Delaying Hajj and Umrah is wajib in madhab Syafi'i, but it is permissible to delay them, even if you can afford to do so. That means even except for in 4 scenarios where they must be done immediately. But other than that, Hajj and Umrah in madhab Syafi'i, it is permissible to delay them. Even if one can afford the Hajj or Umrah, he earns a lot and he makes a lot of money, but he don't want to go for Hajj first. It is okay and it's not sinful to do so. But if he if he dies before he get to do Umrah because of his delaying the Hajj and Umrah, then he is sinful for the delaying. But as long as he can do one Umrah and one Hajj in his lifetime, because because he can afford it and able to do so, then he can delay as long as he want. Doesn't matter. But the best is to do it as soon as one can do. One have the opportunity to do and one can afford, then he should do it, because you never know your the future whether you'll still be able to do it. In the 4 scenarios that they must do it immediately is if it is a qada, it's a makeup Hajj. He did something wrong in his Hajj. He did he got some problems and he didn't complete the Hajj. Then he have to qada, or he did something wrong and he went back. Then he realized that okay, he did a major mistake which will not what is that validate, which is not, that means his Hajj is not valid, then he have to cover, he have to make up the Hajj. In this case, he have to do as soon as possible. That means the next year. If not, then the next coming year, as soon as possible. And the second one, if one has vowed to do so in that year. So if he vowed that he made another that he want to do Hajj this year, then it is upon him. It is wajib now to do it this year, because he have specified that he want to do it this year. Then it becomes wajib. Although Umrah is already wajib, Hajj and Umrah is already wajib, but if he specified to do it this year, then it becomes wajib this year. The third one will be fear of not able to perform it in the future due to a sickness, as informed by a trusted doctor. So if he have a fear, to not able to perform it in the future because he have some sickness, the doctor says, okay, by maybe in 2 years time or next year, in 2 years time or next year, you most likely your legs will be, you cannot move your legs anymore, in something like that. Then in this case, he have to expedite the preparation of Hajj and go. If he can get a place, get a visa and all this, he have to go immediately. He cannot delay anymore. And the fourth one is fear of losing his life or property and not able to do it in the future. Same thing is similar, but this one is if he fear losing his life, like due to his situation, like the doctor says that he got not much long to live, or due to his situation, a war in his country, or so many things can happen, and he has that fear of losing his life or property, that now he can afford it, but next year he might not be able to afford it. So now he have to go it. He have to perform the Hajj as soon as possible, since he can afford it now. Then various rulings on Hajj. Okay, for Hajj, there are many rulings on Hajj, many parts. So one of it is when is it considered fardu ain? The fardu ain of Hajj is the Hajjatul Islam. If he meets all the conditions, this Hajjatul Islam, the first Hajj and the only wajib fardu ain Hajj, is the Hajjatul Islam. The second Hajj that you do is not considered fardu ain. It can be fardu kifayah, it can be sunnah, it can be makruh, it can be haram. So many things can happen. But the first one is Hajjatul Islam, is fardu ain. Then the second fardu kifayah, the Hajj to liven up the Kaabah every year. So it is fardu kifayah upon the Muslims to liven up the Kaabah every year for Hajj season. So people must go. Cannot be like let's say this year nobody. Example, this year nobody want to do Hajj for this year. Then the whole every Muslim in the world will have sin. Uh, I mean, they will have sin because it's fardu kifayah. Some of them will have to go for Hajj. So um, the responsibility lies more on those who are nearer and can afford to do so. Then it becomes Hajj fardu kifayah for them. So what is the number that is needed for every year to liven up the Kaabah? They don't put a number, but any number that can show that the strength of Islam is there and Islam is there. That means to show the presence of Islam, and they are they are what is that? They are doing Hajj and they are present. Uh, so this is the The meaning when they say is fardu kifayah is for that reason. Then it can be sunnah. Hajj also can be sunnah for those who have not reached puberty. Those who have not reached puberty, it will be sunnah for them. And also slaves. Slaves, they don't have to do, it's not wajib for them to perform the Hajj. And those who are able to walk more than 2 marhala, approximately 90 kilometers from Makkah, and he has done Hajj already, so in this case it will be sunnah for him. And makruh, Hajj can also be makruh if he knows that by going for Hajj he will meet with destructions or interrogations. Let's say he's poor, and he somehow get some money to go for Hajj, but he knows that if he goes there, when he come back, people will say, "Oh, how come this guy, poor man, can go Hajj? He must have stolen, or he must have, he don't have, he's irresponsible. He has family, but he don't feed his family. He goes for Hajj instead." All these things, although the family say, "Never mind, we reda, we are okay with that. You can go for Hajj," but then people do not do that. So in this case, it's makruh for him to go. And haram, if he knows that, haram for a person to go to Hajj, to perform Hajj, if a female, example, a female without mahram, and it is not safe for her to do so, then it becomes haram for her to go Hajj. Although the Hajj will be, will be valid, but it's haram. The performance, the act of performing Hajj in her condition is haram, but the performance, the act of Hajj itself is valid. Or going to Hajj without her husband permission, same thing, without mahram or without husband permission. Even have mahram, if she's married and she has, let's say her father wants to go Hajj, and she wants to follow, but the husband say no, then she just go. She just went with the father. In this case, it's haram, because even though she has a mahram with her, but she don't have her husband's permission. Then it's haram for her to go. Or Hajj of someone who is certain of harm by doing so. Like he knows that if he goes to Hajj, he will be killed, or he will be attacked by a group of mafia or something. He knows for certain, confirm. Then it's haram for him to go. Or he knows that there are highway robbers. He knows that he will be attacked. So it's haram. So the next one is the levels of validity of Hajj and Umrah. These are all the introductions of Hajj. I will go through first, because Hajj is like I say, is lengthy. So we'll cover the basics first. Then we'll go into the arkan and wajibat and the sunan. So the levels of validity of Hajj. Absolute validity, Islam. That means as long as you're a Muslim, Hajj is valid for you. Doesn't mean wajib, but it is valid. Hajj is valid from a Muslim. Any Muslim, whether a slave, a Muslim, a male, a female, insane, or woman in menstruation is valid for them. But whether it is what is wajib, then it might not be wajib. Like a slave is not wajib for them, and a child is not wajib for them yet. And someone who's insane is not wajib. A woman in menstruation, she cannot complete the Hajj properly. The wajibat, she cannot. She can. I mean, if she can complete the arkan, then it will be valid, even without the wajibat. That we'll go through later. So, performing validity. The performing validity is Islam and Tamyiz. Tamyiz is majority. or tamyiz, someone, the ta'rif of that scholars give is someone who can eat by himself and uh, what is that? Clean himself after doing his business. Then he's considered uh, have reached the mumayyiz age, tamyiz. He can choose between right and wrong. That is tamyiz. And uh, so to perform Hajj, he must be a Muslim and at least a tamyiz. So if he's a Muslim but have not reached tamyiz, then he cannot perform the Hajj because he wouldn't know how to do it properly. But if he's not baligh but have reached the tamyiz, that means he knows how to do it, then he can perform and it can be valid. Some added that the guardian must give permission if the child has not reached puberty. That means a tamyiz. He has not reached puberty. He must have the guardian's permission for a tamyiz. Uh, if not, without the permission, it's not valid. And vowing, the third one is vowing validity. Islam, tamyiz, and puberty. These three must be present. He must be a Muslim and have tamyiz and also have reached puberty, because he might have reached puberty but he's not a mumayyiz. He have not reached tamyiz. That means an example will be a Muslim who has reached puberty, a baligh. He's a Muslim and reached baligh, maybe 18 years old, but he's insane. That means he's not tamyiz. So he must have three to be to vow like yeah, like Nazar. He vowed to do Hajj. Then there must be three. These three must be present. Then the fourth one is embarking on Hajjatul Islam, the obligatory Hajj. The only obligatory Hajj is called the Hajjatul Islam. This you must have Islam, Tamyiz, puberty, and free. Because with this one act of Hajj, uh, one has dropped his obligation for Hajj. With this one act of Hajj, one has dropped his obligation for Hajj. That's why it's called Hajjatul Islam. So a Muslim, tamyiz, and have reached puberty, baligh, and free man. So if a slave does an Hajj, he performs Hajj. He's a Muslim, tamyiz, and reached puberty, but he's not a free man. So is it valid? It is valid, but it's not considered as Hajjatul Islam. That means, let's say he's a free man, he's a slave, and he performed three Hajj. All the three, inshallah, will be valid. If he perform it correctly, then all the three valid. But then after that, the master free him. Now he's a free man. So the next year, the Hajjatul Islam is upon him. Because Hajjatul Islam must be performed by a free man. So he need to do one more Hajj after he has been freed. Then he will drop his obligation for Hajj. That means he will drop his obligation for Hajjatul Islam. And when it becomes wajib is when there is there are five things that are five conditions present, then it will be wajib. A Muslim, Islam, tamyiz, puberty, free, and able, istita'ah. So a Muslim who have reached puberty and tamyiz, and a free man, not a slave, and able, istita'ah. Istita'ah is he's able and can afford. We will discuss this further after this. Able, and once he have this istita'ah, then it becomes wajib. Once these five conditions are met, it becomes wajib. Be it man or woman, it can be wajib. It will be wajib. So from here we can see also that a child is not wajib for him, but he can do it. If he have tamyiz, then he will Hajj will be valid, but it doesn't cover his Hajjatul Islam. That means once he's baligh, once he have reached his puberty, baligh, he needs to perform one more to drop his Hajjatul Islam. Then conditions of istita'ah, the able or affordable also will be covered until here. Um, okay, I will see after this. So the types of istita'ah, conditions of istita'ah is number one, have enough provisions for himself for the journey to and fro to Hajj and back to his homeland, and for those under his care when he is away. Above all his debts and needs, he have enough provisions for himself for the journey to Makkah and back, and also he have left some provisions for those under his care while he is away doing Hajj. And this is all above his debts and whatever he needs. So he have access. Now, he is he is considered able. He can afford istita'ah. So number one. There's number two. Number two is safe journey to and fro. That means the journey to and fro from Makkah and back to his homeland is safe. There's no like highway robbers, so-called taxes for Hajj that are not stipulated by Sharia. This is not considered. Uh, uh, this is not. I mean, you will not consider a safe journey. Yeah, but yeah. So safe journey will mean there will he safe to go and come back without any problems, major problems. Then number three is availability of water and provision to be purchased where people normally pass through for them. Example, pit stops at normal going prices for the place, not inflated prices. So there is availability. That means if he is to travel from his homeland to Mecca, and of course he will stop by a few places, his pit stops. If he travel by land, let's say, then in these places there should be pit stops selling water and food and provisions, whatever he need for his journey at normal prices. At normal prices for the place. It's not inflated just because of him or just inflated just because for the uh, what is it? Hajj season. If it's inflated, then Hajj is no longer wajib for these people. Then number four, healthy enough and able to endure the journey on the mode of transport that he can afford without serious harm. Because different people will take different transport for Hajj. So he will have to be healthy enough and able to endure the journey on the mode of transport he have chosen and can afford. That means if some people he can afford to go by bus, let's say from Middle East, he's staying in Yemen or Emirates. He's near. I mean, Saudi Arabia is they can go by land to Saudi Arabia. From Oman, they can go by land. So, but he can afford it if going by land. But he cannot afford to go by plane because more expensive. So by land he can afford, but then he cannot endure the bus ride. Then now istita'ah, that means he does not have the ability. Then it's not wajib for him. But if he can endure the ride, the bus trip, then it will be now Hajj is wajib for him. Then number five, possibility of reaching in time with his mode of transport. So yeah, so straightforward. He can reach in time to Mecca to perform the Hajj with whatever mode of transport he can afford and have chosen. Then number six, availability of mode of transport that suits him. This is according to Ibn Hajar. Imam Ramli say any transport will do. and you have to take whatever transport that you can afford and you can endure. Then now Hajj becomes wajib for you. But Imam Ibn Hajar says transport that suits him. That means if let's say the a girl who is married to a poor man, this girl is from a rich family and is not used to taking uh, not used to taking public transport, not used to taking bus. So she is used to taking planes to travel, taking planes and taking private transports and all this. But the husband now she's married to a husband who can only afford public transport and can only afford to take bus for Hajj. Let's say. So now for the girl it's not wajib upon her anymore because she cannot endure that ride. I mean she it's not it doesn't suit her. The ride doesn't suit her. But Imam Ramli say as long as she can endure, then it will be wajib. Doesn't matter whatever transport. So let's say another example will be like a president going for Hajj, um, and all that is available is a motorbike. He cannot get other mode of transport for Hajj. So this is not a motorbike for a president to go to Hajj doesn't suit him. So now it's not wajib for him to go. But according to Imam Ramli says, if that's what he have and that's what he can afford and the only thing that he can afford and the only thing that is available, then he have to go. Uh, and types of istita'ah, there are two types. The first is able to perform Hajj in person or with the help of someone. He can perform or he can perform by himself or by the help of others. That means he can go to Hajj himself. He can be there by present. And an example will be also like with someone help will be uh, example a blind man who can afford to perform Hajj uh, by himself, but he need guidance. He need guidance. That means he cannot see, right? So he need to be guided. Someone have to hold him, but he can do the tawaf. He can do the sa'i. He can do the jamrah and all these things. Everything he can do. He can walk, but he need to be guided because he don't know the way. He cannot see. In this case, he is considered wajib to go also if he can afford, and if he can afford to bring his son or someone to guide him through, then he have to bring. And if he don't have a son or slave or whatever or whoever that he can bring, then he can pay for someone to guide him. Then he should pay. He have to pay someone to guide him through. But if he cannot afford to pay, then he's no longer it's no longer wajib for him to go. Then the second one is he's not able to perform the Hajj in person, but can afford to send someone to do it for him. In this case, he should do so, even by paying someone or giving permission for someone to do the Hajj for him. Because you need to give someone permission before he can do Hajj for you. But that guy must have performed his Hajjatul Islam first. Then he can do for others. So in this case, a rich man, a wealthy man who is sick, let's say, but he cannot afford to go, but then he can afford to pay someone to go, then he is wajib for him now to pay for someone to go to do it for him. But in the person that he pay to do for him must have performed his own Hajjatul Islam first. Then the acts of Hajj. This is where the Hajj continues on the arkan and wajibat and all these things. So this one we will continue next week inshallah. Allahu a'lam. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ربنا انفعنا بما علمتنا ربي، علمنا الذي ينفعنا ربي، وفقهنا وفقه أهلنا وقرابة لنا في ديننا، مع أهل أندري مع أهل القدر أنت وذكر ربي، وفقنا وفقهم لما ترتضي قولا وفعلا كرما، ورزق الكل حلالا دائما، وأخلا أذكياء علماء نحظى بالخير ونكفى كل شر. ربنا أصلح لنا كل شؤون، وأقر بالرضا منك العيون، واقض عنا ربنا كل الديون قبل أن تأتينا رسل المنون، واغفر واستر أنت أكرم من ستر. وصلاة الله تغشى المصطفى من إلى الحق دعانا والوفاء، في كتاب فيه للناس شفاء، وعلى الآل الكرام الشرفاء، وعلى الصحب مصابه القرار. اللهم اهدنا بهداك، واجعلنا ممن يسارع في رضاك، ولا تولنا وليا سواك، ولا تجعلنا ممن خلف أمرك وعصاك. وحسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل، ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العظيم. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم، والحمد لله رب العالمين، والله أعلم. عفوا منكم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.